In this digital age, it appears that so many things online use algorithms. YouTube is an excellent example of this. The almighty algorithm controls just about everything on the site. Your homepage, your recommendations on the side when you're watching videos, and the search results are all controlled by the algorithm. Most big content creators on this site spend time creating content that appeals to it, down to the title, descriptions, tags, clickbait thumbnail, etc. However, the algorithm has its limits, and those limits definitely apply to video game content as well as to other forms of entertainment, if not other subject matters entirely. In fact, it also hurts us in a lot of ways. So in this video, I'm going to break down where the algorithm falls short and how it affects the gaming community. In order to discuss the YouTube algorithm's effect on the gaming community as a whole, we first have to discuss how we believe the almighty algorithm works in the first place, especially when it comes to what gets pushed by it. Google has never released the source code for it, though has made plenty of changes over time that have dramatically affected YouTube. However, at this point, a lot of us have a pretty good idea of how it works. Most of the time, it really comes down to numbers. The first thing, and maybe the most important thing, is the search engine within the site itself. A big part of what helps the algorithm decide what to push is what's being searched. It looks at the search engine numbers and decides based on that what people are interested in watching. Typically, the algorithm will then try to recommend you videos on your homepage or on the side of videos you're watching based on what you've been searching for and watching already. So if you search for a lot of retro gaming content and watch a lot of videos about that, your homepage and your suggestions on the side of videos are going to be filled with retro gaming videos. That part is pretty simple, and I think everyone gets that at this point, even people who don't make content on this site. However, it gets much deeper than that, particularly when it comes to specific videos being pushed over others. So then the algorithm is going to look at the stats behind the video. It looks at the click-through rate. So that's why bigger content creators like to do clickbait on the thumbnail. However, a clickbait thumbnail is not necessarily enough. Your average view time in terms of minutes and seconds, as well as the percentage of the video watched, also matter. If a lot of people click off right away because the thumbnail was misleading, because let's just say, for example, you put a half-naked woman on the thumbnail, but the video was instead about Mario Kart Super Circuit, your video probably won't do very well in the long run. Sure, you'll get that initial bump because the thumbnail got some clicks, but the content didn't fit obviously, and the algorithm will pick up on that. The title of your video helps as well for SEO purposes, and also the algorithm tries to see if the title is dramatic or catchy enough to get people to click on it. So the titles are encouraged to be clickbait as well. Engagement with the content certainly matters. Likes help, as well as people who subscribe to the creator's channel because of that video. Same with comments, as well as sharing the video on other social media sites and elsewhere. If you're a bigger channel that is monetized, you are more likely to get recommended to others just because of that. YouTube also likes it if your channel pumps out content on a regular basis, preferably on the same days and times. Length of the video itself is another thing. YouTube has favored long-form content for the longest time now. However, it was always possible for a video less than 10 minutes long to do well if maybe it had good average view time, because obviously those shorter videos sometimes go viral. So there's always been a little bit of back and forth about this. But now YouTube has been pushing shorts really hard in the last few years or so in order to compete with TikTok. So now there's another debate over whether you go for shorts or you do long form content. Some people gain tons of subs from shorts, but some more established creators don't like them, and their main audience even hates them. Unfortunately, I think this is discouraging certain types of content, such as shorter gameplay videos and shorter discussions about games that don't need to be stretched out just for the sake of it. Every now and then, there is a bit of unpredictability with the algorithm that we can't quite explain. How many times, for example, have you gotten a video recommended about something you've never seen or searched for before? I know it happens to me sometimes. Sometimes this works out well and you discover something you wouldn't have otherwise that you ended up enjoying. Other times it's a complete dud. However, that tends to be the exception rather than the norm, and other things that I just went over are pretty good indicators of how things usually work. Now notice, none of these things have anything to do with how well the content was presented or produced. Obviously, the algorithm doesn't have eyes or ears to be able to watch a video like a human being can and say, hey, that's a great video, or that's a bad video, that guy sucks. The algorithm knows nothing about that. It can't tell you whether the game you're watching has slowdown in it. It can't tell you if a glitch happened in the footage or not, or if the audio levels are messed up. And that's obviously true for anything on this platform, not just video games. Now, is it likely that the video is actually good because a lot of the metrics are solid? Sure. Or maybe people are just watching a lazy video because it's from a big time YouTuber phoning it in, and the casuals don't care because they're curious about some drama that might turn out to be false later. However, once the audience catches on after a while, the algorithm usually catches up as well and reacts accordingly according to declining metrics over time. So now that we've established how the algorithm usually works, how does this affect gaming YouTube? Well, the algorithm uses the numbers to start pushing narratives, and gaming is not immune to this at all. A great example of this is all the video game crash videos that came out a few months ago. That was a product of the algorithm discovering a narrative at the time. It started with all the news breaking that more layoffs were happening in the video game industry. And big YouTubers started making content about this and talking about the video games crash is happening right now, it's all over. And then people were searching for this content as well because there were plenty of articles elsewhere about the layoffs and a potential crash, as well as social media talk on X and Facebook, for example. YouTube sees people searching for said terms, video game crash, video game layoffs, etc., and then starts pushing out content accordingly. Then it felt like a lot of people were putting out videos telling us the sky was falling and the video game industry was doomed. The narrative of the crash was born and was pushed for weeks until some other narrative about other things in gaming needed to be pushed. Like, for example, the controversy around Stellar Blade, or the potential demise of the Xbox, or whatever else it was. There were others as well after it. There are unfortunately some negative ramifications to pushing short-term narratives over almost everything else. The first thing is that nuance often gets lost. Because the narrative in the previous example is that the gaming industry is crashing, anything that gets in the way of that narrative is not going to do well unless you're a huge YouTuber. The race to reaching the lowest common denominator results in a bunch of copycat videos with mostly the same talking points in order to appeal to the narrative, because YouTube thinks that's what people want to hear based on searches. That's not leading to any serious discussions on what's actually happening, so truth becomes secondary to chasing views. If you make a video saying in the title that the crash is not really a crash and that it's really a recession, YouTube is not going to push it, especially if it doesn't have the phrase video game crash in it. Even if your video has people staying on the video to watch it, it may not matter. It doesn't matter how good the video actually is or isn't. It's just going by the numbers at the end of the day, so YouTube says nope. The only exception is if you're maybe a huge YouTuber, as the site is heavily biased in favor of the established stars, so to speak, which is understandable, but not always a guarantee of quality in and of itself. However, even the bigger YouTubers have a tendency to stay on point because they don't necessarily want to take big risk either. I experienced this problem personally because I made a video on why we're not in a video game crash back in March. Precisely because I wanted to counter the narrative going around, which I thought was misleading. Unfortunately, the algorithm punished me for going against the talking points and trying to break things down in a fair and reasonable manner. That is despite the video having pretty solid metrics compared to other videos of mine that got a lot more plays in the past. Especially in terms of click-through rate and average view time. It didn't even get 100 views in a week, even though past videos of mine with lower click-through rates and average view time have gotten about 1,000 in the same time span, if not more than that. It just stopped pushing the video outright after about a day. Sadly, I'm sure that kind of thing happens all the time to smaller YouTubers that are not monetized. Also, because this leads to so many content creators jumping on the bandwagon, whether it's about news or drama about others in the industry or the YouTube gaming community in the short run, it discourages content creators in this community from making great gaming related content that people will watch years later. News stories and drama come and go, but great video games can live on forever. If you're a content creator trying to make videos every week about the latest things happening in order to get clicks and make money, you're less likely to make a great retrospective or guide about a great video game you've played because you're too busy chasing the algorithm, even if you have the production values and skills to make an excellent video. That great video game might be timeless and more important in the long term, but you have to chase the next big topic to make money instead because you're a slave to the system. This sometimes leads to channels changing their content significantly, sometimes abandoning what got them to the dance in the first place entirely. Plus, you have to wonder if a lot of these famous gamers on YouTube have a lot of time to even play video games in the first place because of all this. The truth is, all this trend chasing means you are 100% replaceable. If you're not chasing those clicks, the algorithm will push someone else that will. This trend chasing also means that being first is often better than being the best or being correct. Forget about production values and objective truth in some cases. If you want to be first, you may be willing to cut some corners. Forget to fact check a few things. You may even work sick. The algorithm can't watch the videos and tell if you're wrong in real time like a person can, so don't worry about it. It just sees these statistics, and if they're good, your video will probably get pushed, especially if you're a big enough channel. That's obviously a problem that you cannot deny. Ideally, quality over quantity should be the goal on this platform, not the other way around. The next major problem is that the YouTube algorithm doesn't know high quality from low quality because it's not a human being. This is something that I've already alluded to though. It's especially important when we look at gameplay videos posted on the site. Some of the most popular gameplay videos on the site, especially for older games, are long plays, which is the entire game played usually in one video. Channels such as World of Long Plays and AL82 Retro Gaming have put out tons of these long plays, and are often at the top of the search results because they've been making these videos for a long time and have a lot of subscribers at this point. However, the truth is that these long plays are almost always cheated, using various different tools in order to piece together a playthrough. These are not legitimate runs, they are tool assisted or TAS as we call them. To be fair, World of Long Plays is upfront about this nowadays, and AL82 Retro Gaming admits to it in the channel description. But the algorithm will push these videos above all else in many cases of older games. It doesn't matter if there's a world record speedrun or an in-depth commentated run of a game. The long play is usually going to be first for an older game unless people search specifically for, let's say, a speed run or something else. I don't think that should necessarily be the case. I think if you're searching for Tetris on the NES, you should be getting that kid who was the first one to actually beat the game as the first result, not World of Long Plays. That kid is number 2 when I searched the other day, though the video about him has millions of views regardless. This is actually a big problem for arcade games and other types of games that have smaller followings. As someone who does one credit clears of shmups without cheats, I've noticed this problem a lot and have experienced this issue firsthand as a content creator. For instance, I have a legitimate playthrough of Shikigami no Shiro 2 on the GameCube that scored more points than the World of Long Plays run and with no cheats, and keep in mind this is a game where scoring is very important. However, the World of Long Plays video is higher in the search engine despite my score being significantly better, though we're both near the top when searching YouTube in private window, for example. There are other runs that are even better than mine that are lower on the results than either of these runs. Neither of our videos have been up for that long for extra context. Once again, YouTube doesn't know the difference in terms of quality. SEO in this case trumps quality. YouTube still has not gotten away from traditional SEO, unfortunately, which I find interesting as someone who briefly worked in SEO many years ago. Some people may not care that the gameplay is cheated because they just want to see the stages of a game and don't really care otherwise. I understand that argument. However, because these cheated long plays are often the top results in general searches, and people often choose the first results in a search, this can lead people who are not paying attention too closely to the video description or know what a long play implies to think that these runs are legitimate and can be imitated for real. You'll see people compliment these players in the comment sections of these long plays all the time for their so-called great skills, which proves that a lot of people may not know the difference. This can lead players to think that the techniques they find are legit, only to figure out from personal experience that they are not, leading to disappointment and ultimately not helping players to get better at games. I wouldn't call that a good outcome for those of us that want to see people get into more challenging games such as shoot-'em-ups. Another major problem with the YouTube algorithm is that it has contributed further to the division of gamers. I actually want to make a bigger video about this someday, but I will at least talk about YouTube's part in this. So I've mentioned before, the searches people do have a big impact on what people get recommended. The more you look up something and watch something, the more likely you are to get recommended similar content. The problem is that this eventually creates an echo chamber of what people want to see and almost nothing else. Now, gamers have been divided before YouTube. PC versus console, Nintendo versus Sega, or Nintendo versus Sony, etc. This is not a new thing by any means, obviously. However, I think YouTube is even more effective at creating an echo chamber than most traditional media, because the users choose what they watch, and because of how the algorithms work, everybody ends up creating their own echo chamber without necessarily trying to, instead of the media creating an echo chamber that people then go to because they don't have many options. If you watch, let's say, videos about Nintendo games, a lot of your recommended videos about games are going to be about Nintendo games. To be more specific, if you look up, let's say, videos about Pokemon, you're going to get Pokemon videos. If you watch videos about Smash Ultimate, you're going to get a lot of videos about that game, and you may be recommended videos from serious players in the Smash community, leading you to feel like you're a part of that community. Minecraft is probably the best example of all, as a lot of young kids watch Minecraft videos and then they get more cringe Minecraft videos to watch where the people in the videos can't seem to talk in a normal voice. This usually creates an echo chamber where users don't get to hear as much about other games that may or may not be related to what they might enjoy playing instead. Because the algorithm can only read numbers, as I've said multiple times before. This is especially true if you don't look for a lot of other games on the platform. It keeps recommending what it thinks you're going to watch based on past history, so it's not going to have room to tell you about another great game on another platform, like a different console or even PC. It's even lazy enough sometimes to keep recommending the same videos over again. Also, for example, a PS5 fan in their echo chamber, they're not going to hear a whole lot about the good things happening at Nintendo or with the Xbox Series X if a positive story breaks, or in some cases, they might not learn about a negative story regarding Sony or PlayStation, or they may just get a heavily biased take on it. This isn't helping people to be open-minded. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It amplifies divisions between different groups of gamers that have already existed by showing people what they want to see instead of the truth and something that may change one's perspective. This means that different types of gamers are not interacting with each other like they may have many years ago when gaming was done primarily in person before online gaming took off, particularly multiplayer gaming. For example, gamers in real life had disagreements over SNES versus Sega Genesis or N64 versus PlayStation back in the day. However, if you knew someone that had the other console that you didn't have, which was very likely back then, you had a chance to play those systems and maybe you developed a more well-formed opinion instead of just being a blind fanboy. I know as a GameCube owner back in the 2000s, I had to accept reality that the PlayStation 2 and Xbox had good games that the GameCube lacked, because I got to play those consoles in person. I don't know if gamers are getting those same experiences nowadays, Because even if they do get a video about something different every once in a while recommended to them, it could just be a negative one that confirms their bias already instead of challenging them. It is also possible that younger gamers today stuck on YouTube and other sites like TikTok are probably less informed about the latest big name games across the industry than the average gamer who read IGN and GameSpot regularly 20 years ago. Another thing with the echo chamber is that there's not just one echo chamber. A user can be part of multiple echo chambers beyond gaming, maybe related to politics, music, sports, or religion, for example. This results in even less room for recommendations that could change your mind on a particular game. These echo chambers can even cross over into each other depending on what's going on, like when some games get into politics and chaos just ensues from there. Sometimes these echo chambers even get in the way of you watching channels you've already subscribed to, especially if you didn't hit the notification bell for them. You might have a friend in real life with a channel that you've subscribed to, but at some point those video recommendations can disappear if the algorithm decides to push some bigger narratives. This has happened to me quite a few times with some of my fellow shmup players in that community. And honestly, the notification bell isn't even that practical if you need to hit it for a bunch of different channels, as the notifications will add up and become annoying instead of helpful. Now, some people would say, aren't people responsible for what they consume at the end of the day? That is absolutely true. However, keep in mind that YouTube and other social media sites are a big source of news and information nowadays. According to Pew Research, YouTube was the #2 source for news on social media, only behind Facebook as recently as 2021. In that same study, they also said that 48% of adults get their news often from social media in general, and there are probably even more people once you count those who are more casual. This means YouTube does have a role in shaping the opinions of a lot of people, whether it be regarding games, politics, or anything else. It's not the only aspect of the problem, but it is certainly part of the equation, just like Facebook, TikTok, and X are, and something we have to be honest about. And look, I'm guilty of getting a lot of news from social media myself, so I'm not above this either. Before I move on from the echo chamber discussion, there's one question that still needs to be answered. Why? Why does this site need to do this? Well, it's simple, money. In the early years, YouTube didn't have ads, but once they got bought out by Google, they needed to monetize the site and make it more sustainable. So they started allowing ads, and in order to get advertisers to want to advertise, they need to know that people are going to the platform and staying there. That's where the echo chambers come in. Sure, they do divide us, but they really want us to stay there in order to keep bringing in that sweet ad money. If they break those echo chambers down, they run the risk of you spending less time on the platform. Google can't allow that to happen, as they're competing with Facebook, X, and TikTok for your attention span to begin with, and all of them need money as well. Think of it like this. Do you think drug dealers want their customers to get sober most of the time? No, that's usually the last thing they want, because that means the gravy train is over. I do want to touch upon the increasing use of AI, whether it be from Google or anyone else, because I'm sure YouTube's algorithm is heavily AI based at this point. AI may be able to gather information together and analyze said data much faster than an individual can and give you answers. However, even though AI can learn, it ultimately learns from data that has already been created by people on the internet, and we are not perfect. The AI will not solve the problems I've mentioned because of that. In fact, it may be dangerous because people perceive AI to be so smart that even when it does make a mistake, even a serious one, it is so confident about it that you may get conned. When it does get something wrong, it's probably because it learned bad information created by a human being. A great example of AI gone wrong is the story about Google's AI recently recommending glue on pizza and to eat rocks. Now, I think even most children by a certain age realize that these two things are bad ideas, or at least I knew that when I was a kid. The fact is though, this shows that AI isn't perfect and can be dumber than most humans at its worst. I'm sure it was an isolated incident, and maybe there are ways for AI to learn more and avoid these mistakes, especially because this one was supposedly still in testing from what I understand. But I don't see how you can eliminate these issues entirely as long as AI is learning from things written on the internet. Garbage in, garbage out is still true. Now at this point, what do we do? First of all, I don't suggest quitting YouTube and social media entirely. I think that's too extreme of an answer and completely unrealistic. I think the best thing, at least for gamers, is to get your own opinions on games, and most importantly, spend some of the time that you would have spent mindlessly watching videos to play more games instead. Maybe go through your backlog instead of getting invested in YouTube drama and narratives being pushed by the algorithm and major content creators trying to game it for money. When you're on YouTube, support gaming YouTubers that are making content that isn't just hopping on a bandwagon, whether they be bigger channels or smaller channels. We should like and comment on videos from YouTubers big and small that we enjoy. And for YouTubers out there, especially the smaller ones that happen to find this video, don't worry about the trends too much. Spend time interacting with your audience directly. Don't throw away everything you're doing to chase the algorithm. You should be proud of the content you make. Don't strip the soul out of your channel. Ultimately, we should all try to be the change we want to see on YouTube. I don't think it's realistic to expect clickbait to get ignored entirely overnight. However, I think if we can start picking other videos to watch here and there that are not clickbaity and capitalizing on the latest drama, and taking a bit more time to go through the search results to pick videos to watch more carefully instead of just picking the first video in the results, maybe we can start making a positive impact. I know I'm guilty of getting suckered into watching drama videos at times, so I don't expect all of us to stop overnight. However, if we can do better here and there to get started, it is progress. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Slowly but surely, we can all play a role in making YouTube a better place, and perhaps the algorithm can eventually learn from us and change as well. To wrap things up, the algorithm only knows what we feed it. It can see what we watch and the statistics, but it's not playing the same video games we watch videos about. It can't even watch videos. It prefers drama that'll die out in a few weeks over a deep dive about a video game. It can't tell the difference between a world record speedrun and a cheated long play. It's creating echo chambers just like legacy media has done in the past, but it's sadly much better at it because it's using our behavior to create them. And I know even I'm guilty of feeding into some of it as someone who has been visiting YouTube and watching videos since 2006. But the first step in fixing a problem is awareness and discussing the problem. Don't listen to anyone who tells you, I don't want to hear problems, I want to hear solutions. That's always nonsense from people who don't care. We need to discuss these problems as a community, plain and simple. That's where we should start. I know we're not the only thing affected by it on this site. A lot of what I said applies to politics, sports, or other topics on the site, but that doesn't mean we should do nothing either. But anyways, what do you think? I know it's been a long discussion, but I think it's important to get it all out there. What kind of effect do you think the algorithm has had in recent years on the gaming community? Or are you a long-time user or content creator like myself who has been seeing this trend emerging? Let me know in the comments. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Also, I normally don't ask for this, but since I have a feeling the algorithm may not like this video, share this one around if you really appreciated what I had to say. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon.